there seems to be an ever-increasing amount of distance between the life I live in the real world and the life that is presented to me online and in online spaces. While everything in my immediate environment is very peaceful, very serene, I'm not blind to the fact that the outside world is in trouble. And there seems to be a calculated agenda to bring the world to its knees. Across the world, we're seeing the ramping up of conflicts, military conflicts, and it's a slow progression, one event to the next. You know, there might be some backtracking here and there, but in general, it just seems that there is this push towards total, all-out war. And of course, they're not going to say, you know, this is World War III, because that does not suit the agenda of warmongering. If the people are told this is World War III, there will naturally be an outcry against World War III. So it's imperative for the warmonger to disguise it as, with whatever diplomatic language they need to, and whatever, justifications of trade and foreign policy that they need to put out in front to keep the bombs dropping. So, as I've said before, you're already living in World War III and have been for quite some time. Honestly, a big start date for it would have been 24 years ago, almost the day, 9/11, that calculated chaos sorcery ritual event. 2 Masonic towers tumbling down with the third pillar, building 7, collapsing by itself, allegedly because of an office fire. I really should make a video one of these days just demonstrating how strong steel actually is, and how tough it is to melt a bar of steel. Maybe I'll do that when I have some more time. I'm getting pretty busy here. But I needed to make this video today because I haven't made one in a while, and I had a dream the other night, sort of. It seemed to be a message from, my higher conscience, or from beyond, sort of egging me on. Well, the dream was of a prison tower, an enormous prison tower. It was sort of hollow on the inside, so there were nets on the inside where people were basically just hanging on these nets, and they're prisoners, and they're so dumbed down in this just atrocious orc-like state. They were, ecstatic, with glee when this gray slop was dripping down from somewhere above, and it was just covering them, and I distinctly remember in the dream some fella just said, "Oh, fresh food." It was very, very much a nightmare. But the takeaway I got from that was that this is the trajectory that your world is on. If there is not change, paradigm shift on a massive scale, it's what we really need. But it just seems like people are more and more going down that path of becoming orc-like, golemized, subsumed into the Borg, the AI matrix, all of that. And I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't feeling that myself, that I don't feel this dark calling towards, just giving up and just letting myself getting taken over by this AI parasite, because that's what it is. The parasite consciousness has been alive on this earth for a very long time, and now it is perfecting itself with AI. And of course, this has gone by many different names throughout history. Satan, Ahriman, Cthulhu. It's primordial evil. And I mean, you could take us back to the fall of Atlantis, where the high priests mixed their sorcery with technology and, blew up the planet. And when I really think about it, that does seem to be what AI really is. It's this creation of this Frankenstein-like being that becomes a host for some kind of consciousness, some kind of lower dimensional consciousness. A parasite. And of course, there are many others who are much more qualified to talk on this subject than I am. I want to give a shout out to Black Earth Productions. I think Boza. He's been a real inspiration for me lately, helping me take my understanding of metaphysics to the next level. Yeah, check out his website, Black Earth Productions. But sorry, I wanted to get back to 9/11 for a minute there because I didn't finish my point. Um Office fires would not have been hot enough to melt the structural steel in such a uniform way to bring down those towers at free fall speed. Um, it as I've said before, it would have, wiggled and kinked and then tipped over due to like an unbalanced fire. Like those towers were not in a encased furnace, you know, burning in there for hours to just melt and disintegrate like that. Anyways, it's more important than ever to be able to think like a psychopath. It may, in fact, be one of, if not the most spiritual exercises you can do. If you consider yourself a spiritual person and you do not have the ability to think, keyword is think, like a psychopath, you're at best you only have half the equation, and that is the other side of that is to remain compassionate. You must be able to think like a psychopath, but retain your ability to feel and to be compassionate with others. But if you don't have the ability to think like a psychopath, then you're a sitting duck for a psychopath. And largely, humanity is operating as such sitting ducks, due to religious programming. You take it to Christianity or Buddhism or the New Age movement. This whole mentality of we're just going to pray and meditate our way into, the golden age. Doesn't really work like that when there's a predator, picking you off one by one. And furthermore, a predator that has the patience of some kind of preternatural inhuman being, because the agenda from century to century is congruent. It's not like, the son of one of the Rockefellers or Rothschilds is like, oh no, I'm gonna take this in a whole different direction. No, it keeps rolling. They play out the family plan one generation to the next, due to, they mind control the next generation. Ritualistically, they ritualistically abuse the next generation in their family to be psychopathic and continue the agenda. And it works on such a level where the change from one generation to the next is so so slight. Sometimes it's a bigger leap than others, but it's such that, you know, there's a loss of the memory of how it was when our parents were born. Our parents were our age. We're losing touch with that memory, and it allows them to rewrite the history, present a different picture of how things were, and through media, of course, and then we just, you know, lap that up and think, oh, see, it wasn't that different. And meanwhile, we're just walking into that prison, one foot after another. Day after day. So, the necessity of thinking like a psychopath, because I certainly wasn't raised to think like a psychopath. Yeah, quite the opposite. I've had many encounters where I wish I had more, you know, psychopathic initiation, so to speak, to not be a gullible dupe, you know. Because when you start viewing the world through that lens of psychopathy, that this is a pyramid of power, a hierarchical control system with the rulers at the top and the slaves at the bottom, and everywhere in between, it's this, you know, this system of masters and slaves. It makes a whole lot more sense about what this world actually is, because there's way too many people lying to themselves about the nature of government. They think we are the government. No, government is mind control. Government is slavery. Government is that parasite. It's the external manifestation of a parasite. I'm reminded of quote by Smeagol or Gollum from Lord of the Rings. It's in the Two Towers when Frodo, Sam, and Gollum are watching the Haradrim, the men from the south, moving towards Mordor, and they say something like, "Who are they?" And Smeagol's like, "You know, they're evil men. The Dark Lord is calling all armies to him. Soon he'll be ready." Sam says, "Ready to do what?" "To make his war." And that seems to be what's happening. A slow build-up towards some kind of flashpoint. But the goal is not, total nuclear annihilation. Although we could see nukes be involved, but all of the conflict will be, these elites, they operate under the banner of order ab chaos, order out of chaos. So they use chaos to achieve a greater order by creating a problem and manufacturing a solution out of that to steer the chaos towards a greater order, a greater good, right? So I could see a future where you have the leaders on the world stage after however many years of conflict, shake hands eventually and say we need to put our differences aside, because obviously it's just going to lead to the destruction of the world, so we must create a one world government. And well, time will tell. But what can we do about it? On whatever level you are capable, pull back your involvement from the government. Get involved with your community, your immediate community. And that does not mean your immediate government either. Your neighbors, your friends, but our biggest tool is the ability to say no. Always has been. But if you don't know you're up against a psychopath, see, the difference between government and, a mafia is the mafia doesn't have thousands of hours to indoctrinate every single man, woman, and child on the earth to believe it has some kind of legitimacy in extorting money from you. But government seems to have that ability to compel people to have thousands of hours of indoctrination to convince them that it's their civic duty to pay their taxes and have all the forms and fees and all the paperwork required to be a legitimate person, Nonsense. So yeah, just well, let's hope more of us stand up and claim our sovereignty. Take care, everyone.